All right, everyone. Welcome. I'm just waiting for a couple of you guys to come on before I start talking because I do not want to repeat myself a million times. Hello there, Vic. Hello there. I'm going to bring you on in about a minute. And let me just wait to see if we can get some people on. I know it's Father's Day, and I didn't even think about that, to be honest, at first when I first thought about this. But let's see what we can do. All right. So let me go ahead. I'll do a quick little intro, and then I'm going to bring you on, Vic. In the meantime, thank you, those of us, Campbell. Thank you for joining. For those of you who are currently on the live, if you can just share the live with your friends, your family. It's a very important conversation. I cannot wait to get into this convo today. So please just share the live. Let's get some people in here. If not, this is going to be saved anyways on the IGTV, so somebody's going to watch it at some point. All right. So we did say we're going to start at 2, so I'm going to go ahead and start now. So thank you everyone again for tuning in, for coming in today. My name is Rita Pierre. I am the CEO and founder of Black Ivy Media. We are a platform that seeks to change the narrative of the Black diaspora through digital media. And so today is our first ever, oh, thanks, girl. Thanks, Debbie. Today is our first ever The Brunch Buzz. And this idea came about, I don't know, maybe a couple of months ago with my PR girl, Brianna. Just thinking about how we can, do more with our platform. And so the Brunch Buzz is going to be a monthly series. We're going to talk about a variety of things. So this week this month, we're talking about home ownership awareness and the importance of it. But in the following month, each month is going to be a different theme. It's not always going to be a serious topic. It could be something, very lighthearted. But the point is that we want to have a conversation. I, made my little drink. We're going to be putting out recipes about a week out from the actual talks. We're hoping to be able to partner up with some chefs to even come up with some actual brunch items. I ate already. I did not want to be talking and eating, so that's why I do not have my food here. But I do have my drink, which is a Shirley Temple. It's a mocktail. I'm trying to do better with my life. So I'm staying off the alcohol. But I do want to thank you guys who've tuned in so far. Howard 1911, thank you for coming and supporting. So today we have a very special guest by the name of Vic Collins. He is the real estate matchmaker. And I've had the pleasure to interview Vic a couple of months ago, I believe. He was on the According to RP platform, which is a nightly, not a nightly, but a Sunday night radio show that I have. I talk about everything Black community, and we had talked about real estate, and we had talked about his particular work in the community, the amazing things that he does. So I reached out to him. He was more than happy to do this, to talk about the importance of Black home ownership as we are in Home Ownership Awareness Month. So without further ado, I don't want to be, the one talking. I'm going to bring up Vic Collins. And we're going to start the show. So let's see. How do I do this here? I feel like I'm always, there we go. Like I'm always technologically challenged at times. Hey, Vic, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. What's the weather like over there? Because it's hot over here.
It's been rainy and damp
Oh,
here
wow.
in Georgia, so and it's been wet.
All right. So, Vic, I just wanted to thank you again for coming on and being part of this project. I feel like whenever I reach out, you're always like more than happy to be part of the, talking about generational wealth, especially, and how do we, improve and uplift the Black community. So thank you so much for wanting to do this today.
No, I'm always excited when someone reaches out, and I'm especially excited to see. I was especially excited to see you reach out because I enjoyed our conversation before. So.
Yes.
Uh, it's no problem at all. I get, really, really, really up about talking about this. So thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So I just wanted you to just start off by really telling the people like who you are, where you're from, and what do you do?
So my name is Vic Collins. I'm actually from Durham, North Carolina. I've kind of lived quite a few places, but life has brought me to Atlanta, Georgia. And this is where I've been for the last 7 years. I help people in the real estate space. So, buyers and sellers and investors find property and do all kinds of amazing things with real estate that helps grow their wealth. So it's been an amazing journey so far and is growing ever so fast. And I'm happy to see so many people understand what it can do for them and take advantage of how they could use it in the space to grow their family's wealth and things they're able to do with real estate, just in the future. So, yes, that's a little bit about who I am. I could go down a rabbit hole, but in a nutshell, that's who I am.
All right, all right. So June is Home Ownership Awareness Month, and so we really wanted to raise awareness on this particular, issue because I feel like it's always been a thing within the Black community where we're talking about home ownership, but we're also talking about how disproportionately, I guess, affected we are when it comes to home ownership. And so it's a little daunting for a lot of people. They might want to
Mhm.
do it, but the process is either too crazy or they feel like there just really isn't enough opportunities. They don't know where to look. They don't know, what's going on with it. So I wanted you to just maybe give a brief overview of like what is home ownership? What does it
Yeah.
mean to be a homeowner?
Home ownership is basically, everybody needs a place to stay, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
we're either renting or we own, right? And the thing with real estate is, it's the opportunity to uh, take your financial resources and be able to just have complete ownership of that place that you call home, that roof that you put over your head.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so much more than that. It's not just the dwelling, right? It's how you're able to use and leverage the dwelling to build your financial resources or leverage it to grow businesses and other things that you can do with the property. So it's not, we take it literal when we say like own a home, but it's like owning yourself, owning and having the freedom to do a lot more. This is what home ownership really is.
Okay. And so, people are thinking, all right, I want to be part of this home ownership club. Like I want to be able to own something. I want to be able to, create generational wealth for my family. But like
Mhm.
what are the steps to becoming a homeowner? Like what does that even look like?
Well, it's very, very simple. And simple doesn't mean that it's easy, right? So let me say that because it's not easy. But there are simple things that we can do to become a homeowner. And one of the things we can do is sort of understand how credit works.
Mm,
So a lot of people don't really understand that part of it, and that's a huge part of home ownership. We need to understand um, that we need credit. Credit's necessary. So, those of us who don't, believe in, credit cards or, carrying balances on different things that will help build credit, that's kind of a false idea. So we need to understand that we need those things in order to become a homeowner. The second thing is we have to be able to be less consumers, right? We consume a lot as a society so that we can save some money because that's one of the biggest reasons why we can't become homeowners is because we don't have enough money to get in the space, right? Well, people say, well, I can pay my rent and I can do this and I can do that,
mm-hmm.
um, which is true. In many cases, rents are probably more than mortgages on homes, but people don't have as little as 3.5 5% down um, for down payment funds on money. So uh, being very conscientious about what it is, what it will take to get into home ownership is important when it comes to saving our money.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people think you have to have money. That's a misperception about having a lot of money. Just you have to have some sort of idea and budget to get started. And in a lot of cases, you're not going to have your dream house in the beginning, but that's not the point. The point is to get into something, build that equity, and then leverage that equity to get into something else. So that's kind of how it works.
Okay. So now I know a lot of times we talk about, the generational wealth aspect, right? Like there's all these
Yeah.
pros of home ownership. You get to actually own something, you get to leverage it, right? But,
Yeah.
what are some cons when it comes to home ownership? Because there are people who are like, yeah, this sounds great and everything, but it still sounds crazy to me. What if I'm somebody who likes to move all over the place? Like this might not be my
Yeah.
thing. So what kind of cons are associated with home ownership?
Well, maintenance is a big one. So, a lot of times we don't account for having to maintain the house, right? Interior and
Hmm.
exterior. That's a cost. So I would say taxes, that's something we don't account for. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, depending on what's going on in your area. Those are kind of two of the main things that I can see as being potential challenges for people because if you are limited financially, then you think about, well, if the water heater goes out or the furnace goes out or if a pipe bursts, then how am I going to pay? How am I going to pay for that? But there are ways to get around that, and I think overall, just having the proper education, even still, there are more pros than cons.
Hmm.
um, but those could be a few things I could see that could be challenging for people to think about when it comes to home ownership. And if you're like me, you don't have time to maintain a yard. So maybe a single family isn't the right fit. Maybe it's a townhome or a condo. So, um, I don't want to cut grass. Not
Hmm.
that's just not my lifestyle. But that could be a thing for some people, right? As well, I work a lot, or I travel a lot. So how do I, keep the yard up? So and with that, HOAs, right? That could be another con for some people,
Hmm.
having to deal with that and potential liens on properties if you don't maintain the property. So, but my job here is to help educate people on all of those things so that we can turn those cons into pros and so that we can all become wealthy people.
I like that. I like that. And a lot of the things that you mentioned, that would give some people like myself strife, right?
Yeah.
Like the boiler broke. What do I do?
Yeah.
I got to start cutting grass now. Like, what's this?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, one thing that you said is, money, right? And I think a
Hmm.
lot of us, when we approach this, we want to own a home, we want to own a home, but we don't really get into like, where's the preparation for it? And so when an emergency happens, now we're like tapping out into our credit cards. We're asking our family
Yeah.
members to borrow money.
Hmm.
So I think that that's a really good point is that, there is money involved in the process, right? You can't
Absolutely.
just walk into it blindly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can't, I mean, nothing, I mean, in an apartment, right? We just call maintenance, right? And they come out and fix things, but that's not the case with the homeowner. You have to come out of the pocket. So just, even as you're thinking about, that goes back to my point of saving, right? So overall, we just need better saving habits, right? Even
Hmm.
not just to get into the home, but after we've gotten into the home, maintaining the home, we still need to be setting money aside to account for things that may come up that'll help us keep it in great shape. Because we all
Hmm.
know that when it's time to sell, that houses sell for higher and better when they're in a great location and are in great condition.
Hmm.
So the way to do that is to you can ease that burden by maintaining it along the way. That way, it's not so much to deal with when it comes time to sell, or else you have to sell for a little bit lower price, which is what we don't want.
Yeah. So, with respect to, I guess, this education, right? Because you've mentioned a couple of things. You've mentioned, HOAs, right? Which is,
Yeah.
the homeowner association. But, I had this
Hmm.
conversation with one of my other friends. Actually, I was recording a show with her, in which she, ended up in a community where there was an H, there was a homeowners association, and I was
Yeah.
telling her about one of my friends who lives in Maryland. She got into a community where there was a homeowners association, but she started building a fence. And apparently the fence was not part of their protocol, right?
Yeah.
So now the homeowner association came to her and was like, "You got to take down this fence." So we went to law school together, so she's one of those like very well equipped, and she's like, "Well, I'm not going to take down the fence." And instead, what she did was she found a way to become the president of the homeowner association and change the rules. Now
Yeah.
everybody can't do that, obviously, right?
Right.
So where would we get this type of, education? Like, how would we get this information to navigate these pitfalls?
Yeah, I think once you identify a place you really want to live and kind of understand if there's an HOA in place, you can always ask for the HOA covenants, right? And make sure you read those documents, right? They're pretty dense and they're pretty lengthy, but that's where you'll find information about what you can and can't do to a property before you move into it. And that information is readily available before you put an offer in on a home in the community. So, and it's very important because there are even restrictions on the types of animals you can have in the community, the types
Mm.
of dogs or cats and things like that. And there may be some communities where you can't have pets at all. So, I've run into that quite a few times. So that's very important to find a community, get the contact information for the HOA, reach out and say, would love to see the covenants, the covenants and declarations. That way you know what you're getting into beforehand.
Now, is there a real estate property life coach guru or something that somebody can like hire? Because again, you're mentioning things like ask for the covenants, ask for this, but somebody, who's again very new to the home ownership process, because I think, as we get into this conversation about the Black community, a lot of us don't come from that, generational wealth. We don't come from generations of home owners. So
Yeah.
these are things that we're just like, we don't even know. We just want a house, So
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
there like, is it a real estate agent or a real estate, like who would be that, I guess, guru in a sense that I can go to and say, I know nothing about home ownership. Please guide me.
Well, that's me, call me. No. Yeah, so like I know I've been in this space for quite some time. I work across several states, so I have a pretty good understanding from state to state.
Hmm.
What some of the laws are that could help people. But I'm more than happy to help people um, understand, just educate people about the real estate space. And you could send me questions on here, IG. You can call me, you can text me, you can email me. So I'm happy to answer questions. And the best way is to probably follow me because I do it
Yes,
quite a bit.
please follow Vic.
That's probably the best way. I have some wonderful things we're working on content wise, video wise, that's going to help with this part of the education. Because I realized that I've been getting a lot of requests about
Hmm.
some of these very same things. So I'm going to have some living documents and things out there for people that they could hold on to help them feel like they can be very like aware of what's happening in the space.
Yes, definitely. I think like some sort of like FAQ packet ebook or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people are interested. They're interested in this home ownership, especially now with everything that's going on. I mean, especially those of us who live in the cities. I'm from New York. So, when COVID happened, we're like, where can we go? Where can we,
Right.
like, what can we do? Man, I wish I had a property somewhere. But then we're like,
Yeah.
how do we even get started? So there's a real interest in this right now. So,
And it's grown. I mean, and here's the thing: if we don't own anything, we don't have anything. So we have to really understand that the way we begin to build community, one way I'll say that, and then I believe is one of few ways is through home ownership. So I don't what I find a lot of times is people make a lot of assumptions about what they can afford and what they can't afford. But you
Mm-hmm.
you really just have to get in the game. It doesn't matter what it is or where it is in the beginning, but you have to make an effort to own something, and then you have to make effort to leverage that something. So, who cares where it's at? Right now everything is virtual. Well, we
Mm-hmm.
live in the information technology age, and you could manage things on the internet. So there are a ton of ways we could get into this space. It may not be your local market, right? I mean, it may be some other market that's more affordable, like in the Midwest. But despite that, I'm here to help people strategize about how to do that, and where to do that, because I want to see that happening for us. Every other community and culture does a really good job of that, and I see us getting better at it, but that we still have a long ways to go in terms of being able to create leverage and generational wealth. But I see it every day at the closing table. I'm like, man, these people walk away with hundreds of thousands of dollars just from selling a house, right? So, and think about what you're able to do with that, the life you're able to create for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
um, the debt you're able to pay off, the debt it's a lot. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's very, very, very powerful, and we need to understand that we have to get out of renting. And here's the other thing, and I think I spoke about this before, is whenever we have ownership, we do pay taxes, property taxes, and those taxes go into building our communities, and that's very important. So when we talk about schools, when we talk about things that are going on around, across the street, we need tax dollars, we need property tax dollars to help build programming. So,
Mm-hmm.
the more people we have into ownership, the more that's possible. So, we have to start thinking like that, right? Um, and it's just a smarter way, right? We can deduct the interest on mortgages. So, as we begin to grow our income, right, we need these deductions. And home ownership gives us a lot of those ways we can reduce tax liability to come out on top, when it's time for us to retire, and things like that.
It's interesting as you're talking about, paying property tax and things like that. And we're talking about, having access and influence within our communities, right? So we talk
Mhm.
about areas where, the school district is not that great, or, there's not enough programs, like you said. But in those
Mhm.
same, I guess, communities, I think there's a significantly less, I don't know,
Yeah,
Black people own
yeah,
significantly less in those communities, right? And so that's why I think
yeah.
we might see certain things, that we're not so happy about, but yet, we're in a position, like you said, we're renting. We don't really have that type of power, that capital power that makes things move.
Hmm.
So I think that that's also like a really, really good point in that. So you had talked about, sometimes people are not really, sure, I guess, what they can and can't afford, or they make determinations on themselves as to what they can and cannot afford, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we hear a lot of talks about, different types of loans, and the FHA loan is a term that we hear about all the time, but I think a lot of people don't even know what FHA stands for and what that even is.
Yeah, so it's a federal housing authority, like it's through the Federal Housing Authority, and it's a federal loan. But what people tend to misunderstand is they say it's for first-time home buyers. And yes, it was designed for people to get into home ownership, not necessarily first-time home buyers, but anyone, right?
Mm,
Because the down payment is 3.5%. And so this federally backed loan, says, hey, here's your entry into home ownership at 3.5% down. But there is a funding fee with that is rolled into the loan. So it may not be cost effective, all the time. When there's 3% loans out there, conventional loans, and 5% loans, you just have to do the math on all of those things. But here's the big thing, right? When it comes to loan products, we like to think of getting our loan products from institutions like Bank of America and Chase and Wells Fargo, because we see those on every corner. And those institutions don't specialize in mortgages. Do they offer mortgages? Yes, but their primary products aren't to get you into home ownership. So you really have to be mindful and cognizant that you may be pursuing an institution that may not lend to you. And yes, redlining does happen in the mortgage industry. It still happens today. So you have to, kind of be connected to professionals who can, connect you to people who specialize in mortgage lending, people who have the intention on getting you into the house, getting you into the house. And yes, they may sell that mortgage on the secondary market to a Bank of America or a Chase or a Wells Fargo, but their goal is to get you into home ownership, and that can make the difference between you owning a home or not. Prime example, I went into, when I was very early and very much a little bit younger than I am now, I went into a Fifth Third bank, made great money, had the income. They would not give me a mortgage, right? I can presume why, but um, I got connected to the right people. Same, circumstances with the finances and credit and things. Nothing changed, but I was able to get approved for a mortgage, and so that made the difference of me kind of sort of like trying to do it on my own versus
Hmm.
asking questions. And what I don't want people to do is be afraid to ask questions because we may not know the right questions to ask, but we really need to be connected to the right people so that we know where to go and we don't get intimidated or discouraged if someone tells us no. There's a way for us to get it done. We just have to find the right fit for you, the person.
Hmm.
But that's my job and other real estate professionals' jobs is to help find that fit to get you where you need to be.
Okay. So what about individuals who have an exorbitant amount of student loans? So, for example, myself, I went to law
Hmm.
school and I went and got another
Yeah.
master's. And so I can't, like, to even say the number, like, I'm going to shudder, right, as to how much I owe in
Yeah.
student loans. And I have a lot
Yeah.
of other friends who have the same issues. They went to medical school, so they probably sitting on 300, maybe even $400,000 worth of loans. So they
Yeah.
have been discouraged from home ownership because of this debt to income ratio that they keep bumping into. And I think for the longest time, I think the FHA loan they were saying that they were not eligible for, they had to try to get conventional loans. So
Yeah.
I guess at this current state, right? Where are we now? So for those of us who are in that category of we don't think we can own, or we're afraid to even bring on any more debt,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
what can we do if we want to own homes, but we're not trying to have $1 million debt to income ratio.
Yeah. So here's the great news, right? There are products out there specifically for people who may have gone to law school or medical school, where you're deemed to be a high potential high income earner, right? There are zero down products that will, when I say zero down, meaning 0%, you have to bring 0% down and just pay for closing costs, similar to like the VA loan for veterans, out there for certain people. And that 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 will depend on the institution, right? Whether you can get that. And there's going to depend on some other criteria. But if in your case, like you went to law school, there are certain lenders who look at that and will still give you a home loan to qualify for some amount to purchase. That may not be the case for a lot of people. So in other people's cases where they have a lot of student loan debt, one of the things you can do is try to do debt consolidation, because how they look at it is if you have like a combination or culmination of loans in there, 4 or 5 loans, and you're paying, in one payment, but they're scattered across 4 or 5 loans, they still look at it differently, um,
Hmm.
versus sort of like, okay, how can I get this to be like one consolidated product, right? Um, and they're looking at the payment amount, right? Versus like you have one payment versus 5 loans with 5 payments.
Hmm.
So consolidating also helps, um, with that part. But I think if you have student loans, what you can try to do is try to get rid of your other debt, like your car payment. Try to get
Hmm.
rid of that. Try to get rid of your credit cards. Try to get rid of those, because student loans are a little more favorable. They're viewed a little bit more favorable than consumer debt, like revolving debt, like credit cards and car payments. So I think if it's a situation where you could sort of like move stuff around to qualify, then you can do that. That's very helpful. In a lot of cases, people's student loans aren't going away anytime soon. However,
Wow.
here's the good news. If you get into home ownership and you could get into a property or properties that appreciate, you're able to knock out that debt a lot faster than you
Mm,
would be working a 9 to 5. That's very possible and it's very doable. It's just understanding how we have to move things around to create the ratios that are that will work for lenders, and that's where the people who specialize in mortgage lending can help. Also, they recently just changed the thresholds for FHA, where it was a
okay.
little bit harder to qualify for it with student loans.
Hmm.
There was an article that came out this week, and I was asking a couple of friends about it, where that restriction on the amount, and I forget the exact amount, but if you go out there and read up on it on the web, you'll see um, that they've loosened that a little bit to make that ratio a little bit better for people to qualify for FHA. So now is the time, if you've been struggling with debt to income, to see if that product will work for you to get into
Mm,
something.
okay, okay. So we talked a little bit about, I guess, some things that could prevent someone from becoming a homeowner, right? We had talked about maybe credit. We're obviously talking about maybe, debt to income ratio. But are there other factors that could prevent someone to becoming a homeowner?
Yeah, so not filing taxes. So those of us who don't file taxes or we neglect to file taxes, that can
Hmm.
prevent you from being a homeowner. Those of us who own businesses, we need to file tax returns and we don't need to write off everything, y'all. We can't. I see that as being the biggest thing that prevents us from jumping into home ownership is we deduct every single thing. So what my advice would be is to talk with the CPA or someone who has some accounting background to kind of understand what you can write off and what those thresholds look like for us, knowing that we want our own because there's like no give. The IRS doesn't make this process easier for us. So if you know you want to own, you need at least 2 years of tax returns filed at the very least. If you haven't done that, go back and amend your taxes or go back and file your taxes. And just if you owe, pay. If you don't, great. You just need to have them filed to do that. Any medical liens or, if you've had medical issues or we're paying on some medical bills, make sure we can get those caught up. And if we have things on our credit that we need to clear up, make sure that we can get those removed or get that cleaned up as well. Those are the primary things that prevents us from getting into home ownership.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the tax thing is serious. I think this year I have met the category of individuals who do not pay their taxes. I don't think I've ever known anybody who did not pay taxes willingly, right?
Yeah.
And I'm finding that there are more and more of them out there, and I don't understand how they're getting
Yeah.
away with it. But yes, if you want to own a home, you have to pay your taxes, guys, because Uncle Sam is everywhere. He's
He
he's
won't.
all.
They can stop the process for you. So the lender, I mean, even if you have to get on a IRS payment plan,
Mhm.
you can at least move forward with the purchase if you're on an installment plan. And it can't be something you make up to say I'm going to send to the government. It has to be an official IRS installment plan if you owe taxes. But at least that will get you through the process to home ownership or to
Mhm.
getting approved for a mortgage. Mortgage lenders are not. People have to understand is after the crash in '07, '08, things got a lot tighter for home ownership. And even now, you have to be a kind of aware of what's going on in the federal government administrations with what they're doing, the laws that they're creating. Look, guys, they're making it tougher and tougher for you to own a house. So you just have to be on point with like get involved locally, right? This is not just about saving money and being educated with what they do. It's also about who you're electing and who you're not electing. That can make the difference in whether you're able to grow your wealth. So there's
Mm.
this big thing out there now with President Biden and 1031 exchange. I don't want to get too much involved in that because I don't know how people feel, but you need to read up on what 1031 exchange is and what the conversation is about how that's impacting people's ability to grow their wealth through real estate. It's very important.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting, again, not getting too much into the political conversation, but it seems that this administration is, when it comes to people who are trying to build wealth and those who are already wealthy, it seems like there are a lot of bills in place that might restrict, how people are able to obtain their wealth and guide the system in a way that might not be as favorable.
Yeah.
So we're keeping our eyes on that, but it seems to be, like you said, a little harder for people to really get into this wealth gaining activity. So it will be interesting to see how that goes. But what you said is really key. Really being civically engaged. We're not saying for you to go out there and become the next district leader, but at least be aware of who your leaders are, who you're electing. Because they might have some sort of say as to how you can own a home, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Very important. And what people have to also understand with the nature of what's going on now is like we don't ever really see the prices of homes go down, right? The prices of
Mhm.
homes continue to go up, just as with everything else, right? With inflation, naturally, the cost of things go up, right? And so salaries aren't keeping up with the cost of things. They aren't keeping up with the cost of homes going up. And we've been able, fortunately, to take advantage of interest rates being lower. But what will happen is interest rates are going to increase, and so affordability is going to become really tough because we don't see prices coming down, and as interest
Mhm.
rates go back up, that's going to add a lot more money onto mortgage payments for people. So you just have to be mindful. Like right now is the time to get in wherever you are into ownership. Like, don't hesitate. At least reach out to someone, ask questions, but don't miss the boat on an opportunity that could set you and your family up for a lifetime.
Mhm. No, I think that that's very wise advice. And I think that people, like you said, people are starting to kind of jump on that, right? They're starting to recognize that. And I think that that's really
Mhm.
helpful. So we mentioned, a couple of things, I guess, of how people can start preparing, I guess, for home ownership. But what are some key things, right? Like people they're saying, wow, this information is so important. I'm motivated to look into the process. So aside from clearing our credits and our and making sure that our debt to income ratio is somewhat okay, what else can we actually do to start preparing ourselves for this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of information out there on the web on what you can expect when you're buying a house and what you can expect when you're selling a house. Most places are buyer beware, right? Meaning
Mm,
um, you have to do your own due diligence on the purchase of a home. It's not the seller's responsibility to disclose any or everything that has gone on with the house if it's a resale. You just have to
mhm,
understand that sometimes um, even if all does go well in the process, that something still could happen. And what we found a lot is people put that responsibility on the real estate professionals, right? But it helps if you're able to do your own research to kind of understand, all right, I may want to purchase, this is what I can expect, right? I can expect to save $500 for a home inspection. I can expect to pay for an appraisal to make sure that the value of the home is there. I can expect that I may need to pay for a radon test. I may need to pay for the servicing or to more information about the servicing of an HVAC, the mechanicals, right, of the system. Or you don't want to be freaked out when you see cracks in cement, not knowing that that's pretty common, right? So
mhm.
there's like little things you could do to prepare yourself mentally because I think the biggest challenge is first time home buyers, right? Because they don't know what they don't know,
Yeah.
but they also don't know when they could be missing an opportunity. And I see that all the time with first time home buyers. So do your own research, right? And then ask these questions to a real estate professional to kind of help guide the conversation on if it's something you think you should be moving forward with now or down the road.
Okay. So I want to shift the conversation now to really focus on the Black community, right? Because that's
Hmm.
really, the big point of today.
Yeah.
We're raising awareness, but we really want to focus on the Black community and why the rate of home ownership is disproportionately lower. So I guess what would you say attributes to that?
Well, a lot of us have been pushed out of our communities, right? To be quite honest, right? What we know is gentrification. And so what has happened or what is happening, what continues to happen is um the value, right, of land, the value of home ownership goes up. People kind of move in and then push us out. Um, we have for a long time, to be honest with you, we weren't able to own property from the beginning. Right? We couldn't buy property. That's a big part of it, right? And I don't know if
Hmm.
people have been following the Atlanta Realtors Association, but the Atlanta Realtors Association just issued a letter of apology to the Black community, stating these very things, right? That um, we know, and say we, right, the real estate industry knows that there's a disproportionate amount of African Americans who have not been able to take advantage of home ownership and wealth building because they weren't able to own, period. So
Hmm.
that's still the problem, right? The problem is we just haven't been in a position to own. So how do we do that? It trickles down from just resources, right? Socioeconomics. It trickles down to just having the financial ability to afford home ownership. And as I talked about before, that affordability is becoming a huge gap, right? So how do we keep up with that? We need better paying jobs.
Hmm.
We need to fight for more income on our jobs. That way we can afford down payment. Those are things that I think are key. And also, we don't need to give our properties away that we currently have, right? We come
Yeah.
in and someone say, "Hey, I'll give you $50,000 for your property," not knowing that it's worth $250,000. We don't know the value of what we currently have.
Hmm.
So, and then that starts the cycle of gentrification, right? And then you see people running in your neighborhood who aren't like you because they gave you $50,000 to then sell in 3 or 4 years at 300,000, right? That is gentrification. So we have to know the value of what we currently have first of all, and we don't need to give it away, right, for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, I think that's, a really great point. And I feel like I've seen these horror stories where these companies are attacking, particularly some of the elderly, right? Like the ones who've been
Hmm.
on the block for like 50 years.
Yeah.
And they go to them with these beautiful brownstones
Hmm.
and they're saying, hey, we'll give you, like not even 100K, but they disrespect them by saying, we'll give you $30,000 cash for this property. And, maybe they were struggling with some of the upkeep because especially in some areas, brownstones are hard to upkeep. And so they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's just give them this 30K and then we're going to go to North Carolina and buy a house. That's the
Right.
idea in their mind, right? Um,
Yeah.
so I think, like you said, it's understanding the value of your property, but it really comes with education because a lot of times people, they don't know, they just
Hmm.
own and they don't know where to go look. I would say, especially for maybe those in the much older population who are not so
Hmm.
technologically advanced, right?
Hmm.
What can we do as a community to make sure that mama and pop or Mr. Smith or whatever
Yeah.
knows that
What's
they're
going
that
on?
they're yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's very important to be in the know what's going on with your local city council. They're supposed to be lobbying for things that add value to your community. So you could, if you have access to the internet, kind of tune in to their public forums to see what's going on for your representative. Also, there are also urban development plans always out there for your city. So lots of times you can see these plans 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So you can sort of like foresee like, hey, what's happening and what that could do to your potential value. So
Hmm.
kind of stay up on that, right? And say, oh, you know what? In 10 years, they're going to be, building a shopping mall here, right? So that doesn't mean go and get my property away for $30,000, right? You kind of have to know
Exactly.
those things because usually people who take advantage of us, they already know that that's coming. So
Yeah.
that's how they are able to buy low and then cash in on the same property that you may already own.
Hmm. So yeah, it sounds like there's a lot that we it's like we have to do together as a community. So it's not just, us working individually, but really working collectively. So, having somebody like you is great because you're a wealth of information, but I think that, empowering others to then kind of, you know, in a sense, trickle down that information to others, right? Because again, I'm always focused
Hmm.
on the older community who does not
Yeah,
have this access, right?
yeah,
And how can we let them know that your property is worth 1.5 million, don't go selling it for 30K. So I
right.
think that that's a group effort to really be mindful, but to really be intentional with our communities and saving our communities.
And with that being said, that very point, there has been an issue with the houses of Black people appraising lower, right? I think we all may have heard that there have been several issues with people who are not white appraising properties for Black people a lot lower than what they actually are. And then the homes are going
Mm,
to be they're going to be reappraised for the correct value. You have to be on the lookout for that stuff as well, right? An opportunity for people to take full advantage of you. So if you know what's going on around you, if they're 1.1, $1.2 million houses and you get an appraisal for 700,000, then you need to fight that appraisal. And so find a real estate professional like myself who can help get the right resources to you so that you can get what you earned. I mean, people spend a lifetime, they put a lifetime's worth of money into their homes. You should be able to get out of it more than what you put into it in most cases. So
mhm.
don't ever settle in that case. And for those who don't know what an appraisal is what the bank believes your house is worth, right? We're having issues as Black people or banks telling us that our houses are worth less, and that's not the case. Don't ever settle for that, especially if you know what's going on around you. You see people getting way more for their property. Don't let that be the case for yourself.
And I think this is kind of what sparks this hashtag that's playing in my mind. Black, real estate matters, right? Black realtors
Hmm.
matter, because it's not to say that individuals from other communities won't do right by us, but in situations like this, if we're working with, Black realtors that understand our play, right? That understand these issues, I think we
Hmm.
might have maybe a better chance, right, of
Yeah.
getting a correct appraisal, or at least saying, who appraised, your property? This is not correct. Let's go back and fight. Because I think the
Hmm.
average Joe might not understand that, because one, they already don't know the value of their property. So when you
Yeah.
say it's 50,000 more than what you might have been thinking, you're like, oh, great, let me jump on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to be, it's important to find the right professionals to help if you don't know all the questions. And that, again, that's where someone like me comes in. There are a lot of great people like out there like myself as well, but we're the ones that will fight for you. So don't let there's situations where they've used incorrect comps, right? Like who knows why?
Hmm.
Who can only assume why? But that's my job to kind of help understand. Well, you should have used this because this is more apples to apples than that, right? Apples to oranges. So we will fight for you, and it will not. I'm not saying that it won't be a fight because usually it is with us, right? And we kind of just
Hmm.
have to kind of expect that. Um, so. But we can't continue to let people devalue us in other ways, right? I mean, we've already seen it. We've lived it. Our ancestors have lived it. But home ownership is very very powerful. We have to be able to hold on to it and or get what it's really worth.
So now, I think throughout this live, people have gotten the message that home ownership can bring about generational wealth, especially if done properly, and that in order to elevate our community, the Black community especially, we need to jump into home ownership. Like, we need to jump into it with preparation, obviously, but we need to
Hmm.
jump into it. And this can be a way, it will be a way that we increase our value, right, as a community.
Yeah.
Now, something you had mentioned quite early on, and I wanted to kind of hone in on that because, again, you do have a lot of people who might not be interested in owning homes right now. Like, and when I say owning homes, meaning they're not looking for their home, they're not looking for their live-in home, right?
Yeah.
But they do want to get into real estate investment. So
Yeah.
for people like myself who live in
Mhm.
the Northeast, particularly New York, right?
Yeah.
We might not want to invest here because we don't have $2.5 million to do that.
Yeah.
So, I guess, how is that process now of, becoming a homeowner out of state? Like, so let's say, in Georgia, right? Or in North
Yeah.
Carolina, where I know you're familiar with. How is that process of an outsider wanting to build wealth, unable to build it where they currently live, but want to build it somewhere else?
Yeah, I think you have to tap into just there a ton of real estate communities who can connect you to people like what that is commonly known as is probably the term syndication, right? And that's people pooling their resources together to buy property. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're finding more and more like in New York, right? Where the properties are really expensive. You probably have people syndicating, meaning, hey, I have a group of 5 partners and we are each putting in $20,000, right, for a down payment.
Mm-hmm.
That would work best for a market like that, right? Because the properties are so expensive. But to get connected to those, there are local real estate groups that you can join just to get your foot in the door. I often start with like my own friends, right? Because everybody's looking for passive income. So and but you have to put it all on paper too, right? You have to make it
Yeah.
official, right? So it's like, okay, we're gonna form a partnership. Let's become a legal entity to do that. I'll own 10%, you own 10%, such and such will own 10%. We start a business bank account. You do it very legit, right? And then you then take those resources to buy properties that are in markets like New York and LA and Chicago and some of these more expensive areas. But I say you start there. And if you're looking, again, and I can always connect you to people from across the country if you're looking for some resources locally. But there's people everywhere who I think are getting they're getting the message, right? So this is happening. People are talking about it and they want to do it. It's just a matter of being connected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, speaking of getting connected and being connected, I know you
Mhm.
had said earlier on that we can call you, DM you, message you, all this great
Yeah.
stuff. So, how do we do that? What are the handles? What's the phone number? What's the email address? Because I know that people are probably like, I want to talk more with this guy.
Yeah.
He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. So you probably can connect with me best on my business Instagram, which is at VJR. It's just my initials, Vic Jr. THE Realtor. And that's you can search for me on Facebook as well that way. But that's my IG handle for business or my personal, which is the same, is turned into one of the same. Vic underscore Conquers 15, and the Conquers with the K. You can message me there. You can give me a call on my number, 404-987-0274, or you can email me at Vic at the bjrgroup.com. And I'm pretty responsive most to text because I'm in my car all day, every day. Thank you so
Yes.
much. Or Instagram because that is where I receive the most uh, information about people wanting to learn about real estate. So those are probably the 2 best channels. But anytime I'm willing to help you anywhere you are in the world. Just let me know what it is you need, what it is you're looking for, trying to do, and let's see how we can make that happen because it is my goal and purpose in life to get people into ownership. So that is never a dumb question. There's never anything silly about it. It's about let's get you connected, let's get you resource, and let's get you owning property. Let's get you into passive income. Let's get you into building equity. Let's get you into all of those things.
Okay. And so what are the markets that you work with the most? 'Cause I know you're in Atlanta or in the Atlanta
Hmm.
area at least.
Yeah.
What are the other states where you are, where you work in the most, I would say?
So I'm working the most in Atlanta and in Charlotte right now. Um, that's just access wise,
Hmm.
southeast, but we're going to be working in South Carolina and Florida over the next year, and then we're going to be helping people purchase international property,
Oh,
right, for
wow.
the purposes of Airbnb and things like that. So stay on the lookout for for that information, but If you're looking to buy property in those two states, definitely give me a call. If you're looking at other states, I'm very connected to other agents who I trust that can help you make purchases anywhere. Don't let the area stop you from getting involved in the real estate game. And if you want to do market analysis, we can sit down and talk about, okay, what are some other parts of the country that'd be a good fit, right? Maybe it's Ohio. For me, I do a lot of investing there because guess what? Property is cheaper.
Mm.
Or maybe it's, some other state like Nevada, right? Where people don't think that the properties are in Las Vegas or right outside of Las Vegas. They're very cheap to buy, right? Or in Phoenix, right? So there's a ton of places that we can start this process for many people. I just have to know what your goals are. And once we identify those goals, then we could put a plan together to help execute on those.
Okay. Well, Vic, I mean, this conversation, I mean, all of our conversations are always amazing, but I think
Yeah.
that this time, on the live platform, this is going to be saved and we're going to have a lot of people watching this, as it's going to live on the platform. So people are going to have access to this at any point. I think this was really, really important. I think that you definitely clarified a lot of areas of concern for individuals, especially those, I guess, from the student loan population, I would say. But even again,
Mhm.
for those who, again, I might not be looking for their permanent family home, but want to be able to jump in to this real estate market because they still want to build wealth, right? And real estate investing is definitely a way that we've heard, at least, that
Yeah.
that can happen. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and for making yourself available and accessible to the people who are going to be watching this. Again, I have pinned his Instagram handle, his professional Instagram handle. Definitely, follow him on his personal as well too, so you guys can get information. He's again a wealth of information, very well connected. I keep talking off and on about possibly purchasing, property in Georgia, maybe. So I will definitely be hitting you up for that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, let's and listen, just to help people understand, most people's first home is not their forever home, but
Mhm.
they use that home to get to their forever home. So if you think about it like that, that makes it a lot easier to digest with, okay, this is just something temporary that I can use that'll get me that 40, 50, 60, 70,000 dollars for my nice $700,000 house that I want down the road.
Yes, the Beyonce house, as me and my
Yeah.
friend likes to call it.
Yeah, exactly.
He wants the Beyonce house. We'll
All
deal
right.
with, something little for now, but the goal is the Beyonce house. So.
Right.
All right,
Okay.
Vic. Well, thank you so much. I realized that I took up your time on Father's Day, so I'm
No,
sure you
this
have,
is fun. This is look, I work weekends, right? I'm one of those, I'm full-time real estate. So weekends
Mhm.
are, this is just like business for me. So my weekends are during the week. So this is no problem at all. And for
All
those of you
right.
guys who are fathers out there, happy Father's Day. And those
Yes.
moms who are also fathers who are playing the role of father, happy Father's Day to you as well for doing that. So we
Yes.
appreciate you.
Definitely, definitely, we do. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in on this
Yeah.
Father's Day. I know that we would have gotten a lot of more people, but this IG Live is going to live on our platform. It's not going away, so you'll be able to access it. Definitely, again, follow Vic. Follow him for any questions, any insights, and also continue to support Black Ivy Media as we continue each and every month to present you the Brunch Buzz with a different guest each and every month. But we are really, really happy to have had Vic be our kickoff. This is our first ever. This is the launch of the Brunch Buzz, and so you are a first ever guest with such an important conversation. So we definitely appreciate you for this, and thank you guys again for tuning in. And with that being said, folks, have a great Sunday, a happy Father's Day, and we'll talk to you guys next month.
Baby. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mhm.